Good morning. So can you hear me already? Yes. Okay. So yesterday I had short lecture about what is important in cannabis. I explained that cannabinoids. It's not enough that cannabidiol and tetrahydrocannabinol are very important compounds, but except of them, there are another 142 different other cannabinoids, and I also explained to you that there are many other compounds which have effect on our organism, which can be anti-cancerogenic, anti-inflammatory, antioxidative, and so on. So from these other compounds, I mentioned terpenoids. Terpenoids, these are terpenes. Terpenes are hydrocarbons, and terpenoids are like terpenes, but they have some another atom, like oxygen usually. And then I told that there are also important compounds which we talk polyphenols, and many polyphenols are very efficient for treatment, and I presented some of them, and then part of these polyphenols are also flavonoids, and I mentioned just example of caempherol and caempherol glycosides, because flavonoids also in the form of flavonoid glycosides. It means that they are combined with 1 or 2 molecules of sugar. Flavonoids and flavonoid glycosides in cannabis are already known 49, and they are very efficient. So you must understand that we treat patients not only with cannabis compounds, which we are called cannabinoids, but also with other compounds. So sometimes somebody can tell you, I have very pure oil, cannabis oil. Yes, it can be very pure from the point of view of cannabinoids, but maybe they are missing some other compounds, because I explained that for different persons can be different strains, and one person is sick, so one strain treats him, and another strain with the same amount of cannabinoids and ratio of these compounds don't treat patient. So this is what I wanted to tell you yesterday, that also other compounds are very important, and if you have any questions, so I am ready to answer you. Okay, you can ask me.
Hi, Lemire. The paradigm by which I look at things always divides metabolism into carbohydrate versus fat. And what you'll find with so many of these individual compounds is whether or not they're promoting or turning off directly the carbohydrate burning, or promoting or turning on or off the fat metabolism. And what you'll see is that those glucosides and so many of the flavonoids, etc., they all turn on fat burning, and you can see that by their activity with AMP kinase. So if you just look for the specific chemical and punch in AMP kinase with, in a PubMed search, you'll always see how things are working, because they're either turning on the recycling of fat burning, or they're promoting the free radical production that utilizes carbohydrate and electron transport system. It always works. It's always true.
Yes, it's of course very important, not only these chemicals, these compounds, but there are many ferments and different compounds which help change one compound to the other one. Like, for instance, cannabinoids. I told you that the main is cannabigerolic acid, and from this originates by 3 independent weights: cannabidiolic acid, tetrahydrocannabinolic acid, and cannabichromenic acid. And this is with the help of synthase. So cannabidiolic synthase make cannabidiolic acid from cannabigerol, tetrahydrocannabinolic synthase, tetrahydrocannabinolic acid, cannabichromenic synthase, cannabichromenic acid. This found Japanese scientists, and these are very important, of course, not only compounds which can treat you, but also are important these active compounds which help change one to the other compound in biogenesis in the plant.
Where can we find data on specific flavonoids or other compounds that are in cannabis by strain? Is there any register where we can find what strains are more abundant with specific compound?
At present time, there are known worldwide probably several thousand strains which are separated to groups according to the amount of cannabidiol or tetrahydrocannabinol and their ratio. Usually three, the most important are CBD high strain, THC high strain, and as called Dr. Hornby 50-50 strain. It means about the same amount of cannabidiol and tetrahydrocannabinol. At present time also started in some laboratories to study terpenes. I do also this research, and so it's known that certain strain has certain cannabinoids and certain terpenes. At the present are not studied other compounds. So all this, what I told you, 1,265 compounds which are known, these are compounds which were identified in different strains, but they are not connected to the ratios of cannabinoids, because the target was to find all possible compounds in different strains. So this is just music of the future, that we shall study particular strains from the point of view of the other compounds. So later we shall know that certain strain has certain cannabinoids and their ratios, and certain terpenoids, and certain other compounds, probably polyphenols. This will be the most important compounds. Of course, I'm not talking about, they were found also vitamins and other compounds which are very useful for us, but this is not the hint of cannabis. The hint of cannabis, of course, are cannabinoids, terpenoids, polyphenols, and these active compounds. So this will be studied in the near future. At present time, what I know are studied only strains for cannabinoids and terpenoids.
Thank you.
Hello, Lumir.
Yes, bonjour. Yes, Paul.
I don't know if the mic is on. How you doing, Lumir?
Hi.
Hi. It's not working? It is working? Yeah. Lumir, a fellow was telling me the other day that there are CB2 receptor active compounds in echinacea.
In?
Echinacea. How is the name for echinacea? Echinacea flower.
Polygonum cuspidatum in Latin. Polygonum? Maybe he doesn't know.
Lumir, do you understand Slovenian? Ameriški slamnik. Echinacea.
Because I can hear, but it's with back echo. So sometimes I don't understand some words.
Yeah, maybe we can type in the computer. Google it.
How? Google.
I can hear you very good. Because you are without echo.
The answer, Paul, is yes.
So, Paul, what you wanted to ask?
What did you want to ask?
Oh, I gather these are not cannabinoids, they may be alkylamines that are receptor active. It would explain the, for example, you take this plant before a cold or flu and it often clears up because you're activating CB2. But I wonder what these compounds are. I doubt if they're very much, I doubt if they're cannabinoids. I think they're, can you hear me?
They're not cannabinoids.
Paul, I now heard Maya, but not you. And they were by computer. I am sorry. Yes, so if you can repeat a question.
A fellow was telling me the other day that there are receptors, CB2
Or
receptors.
if you can tell it by computer, because by computer I can hear it very good. If you can come to computer, because when Maya was by computer, Paul, if you can tell this to computer, this I can hear very good.
Can you hear me now?
Perfect, perfect. This is perfect.
Okay. I don't know how to say the name of this plant in Czech. I don't know how to say it.
Show him this picture.
But I'm,
Show him this picture.
It's well known in case
you see that?
Yes, I see that. Yes, yes, yes.
We already have written the name of the plant to this program, which are we having conference on.
Yes. So Paul, what do you wanted to tell about this?
There's CB2 reactive compounds in this plant.
Yes.
And it would explain why echinacea works for colds and flu, because it's CB2 active, but I'm just wondering what the compounds are. I doubt if they're cannabinoids. I think they're probably alkylamines that are CB2 receptor active.
I really exactly don't know the name of this plant, but it looks like one plant where are phytocannabinoids, because there are several other plants where are phytocannabinoids. Some of them are the same with phytocannabinoids from cannabis. Some of them are only similar, but they fulfill the name phytocannabinoid. Yes, so these compounds were found in different parts of the world, and also probably, I am not sure, but according to the picture which you gave me just now, so I think that it can be also this plant that has similar compounds, and in the fact not all these compounds which were found which fulfill name phytocannabinoids, and this is about 50 compounds. In November I published with Professor Appendino from Italy. We published full picture of all phytocannabinoids, not only from cannabis but also from other plants. These are about 200 phytocannabinoids today known. So there are biodynamic action still is not known, but I hope that also this will be studied in the near future, because some of them were the same phytocannabinoids as in cannabis, but had different optical rotation. So it can influence also action of this compound. I can give you sample how it can influence. You know that very important is cannabidiol, and sometimes they like to synthesize cannabidiol, and if you have synthetic cannabidiol, usually they start from terpenes which are not optically pure. In cannabis, these compounds are minus optical rotation. And sometimes they start to synthesize, for instance, cannabidiol from terpene, which is 95% minus and 5% plus. Then when they have synthetic cannabidiol, cannabidiol is 99.9% pure cannabidiol, but like compound, but not optically pure. There are about 5% impurities, 5% plus cannabidiol. And this we proved and published that plus cannabidiol binds to the cannabinoid receptor, so has quite different action. That is why it's very important that cannabidiol is not synthesized, and because can be impure optically, and better it's to isolate it from the plant, because you can be sure that it's 100% minus.
Tutu. Alako. I have a question. I have a question.
This works perfect, Paul.
Hello.
Yeah. I can hear you, Paul. Very good.
You hear me?
Why don't you repeat her question and then wait?
Hello. Do you hear me? No.
Just repeat her question and then wait.
Hello, I have a question.
Oh, I can hear you very good.
You can? No. Okay. My name is Barbara. I have a question for you. I am ill. I have sclerosis multiplex. I smoke cannabis. Is this good for me or not?
I don't understand anything. By computer, I can understand everything.
You hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah. Mrs. Peshut is asking you. She has multiple sclerosis and she using cannabis to smoke. If this is good weight of application for her.
Look, also concerning multiple sclerosis, cannabis can help very good, but we have also examples for long-term use of cannabis in multiple sclerosis. Of course, it depends what strain is available, because in Czech Republic is very famous one lady which has multiple sclerosis, and cannabis helped her unbelievably. She was on a wheelchair and she get up, but today she's again on a wheelchair, and slowly it goes down. Why? Because this is only palliative treatment. It can help that patient is without symptom, but it doesn't treat the disease. So disease continues and doesn't treat the patients. It's not something like cancer that you can treat cancer fully with cannabis. But what was, excuse me that I go to the other disease, but what was found, it's very interesting in Spain, that when patient is free of cancers, just clean, so he must continue to use cannabis. Because patient which stopped to use cannabis when he was clean, so cancer returned. So you must continue even even when you are clean, so it's fantastic, of course, but you must continue to use cannabis to prevent return of this disease. So concerning multiple sclerosis, of course, for different patients are different strain. So you must find the strain which works the best with you, and then you must do your best to use this strain. Because I have one example, not multiple sclerosis, but again, cancer. One lady with cancer in Israel, when I saw her for the first time, she was almost finished. And after 1 year, she was wonderful. She told me, I feel like healthy, I have no problems, and she was like clean. But then she couldn't find her strain. This is problem because officially it's very limited. Patient, of course, also here, they don't have enough cannabis officially, so they must buy it on the black market. And she couldn't find the strain which she used, and she died because she tried another strain and it doesn't help her. So it's very important when you will find the strain which helps you. So you must do your best to keep this strain that is available for you and continue all the time with this strain.
Hello, I would like to ask you some question about prevention. My son-in-law and my daughter are planting 2 strains of cannabis, industrial cannabis, Fedora 17 and Pheromone, and they produced oil. And when we are giving oil to our friends or to family, we would like to know what kind of prevention for maybe for healthy people can we tell them. What is the use and what is the profit that they can have if they use these oils on preventive purpose? Thank you. Do you have any experience, or do you know this from literature?
Unfortunately, I didn't understood all words. But as I understood, you told me that you had from physician 2 strains, different.
We planted 2 different strains and we produced oil.
Yes.
And we would like to know what kind of preventive effects this oil can have on preventive efforts, prevention from diseases or from bad feeling or from this kind, they have on, let's have healthy people. For nowadays healthy, we don't know if anyone is healthy at this moment totally.
Of course, it's very important when you have these 2 strains, so to know what exactly are the strains from chemical point of view. And then when you have oil, you can use it orally or you can use it rectally. So these are different ways. And for instance, rectally, it's very efficient. But what I know officially, now I was in the United States and we were talking about that, and they told me that THC is not efficient per rectum. But according to the patients which use suppositories, of course, there is not only THC, because all these scientific studies, they start with 1 single compound. And we know that this oil, that this is complex of compounds. So it's quite different biodynamic action than just only 1 compound. You know, like good example is, I every time give example, cocaine. If you use cocaine like pure compound, you can use it twice and you are finished because you are dependent and you can lose everything in your life. If you lose coca leaves also contain cocaine, but there is complex of compounds, and even after years of using of coca leaves, you can stop immediately without any problem. and without any harm. This was proved even by scientists. The best example is Professor Schultes. He used it 7 years in Amazonia region because said that without this it was impossible to live. And when he returned to Harvard University, next day he didn't use it. After 7 years, everyday use and no problem. So important is really what is the complex of compounds and how you use it. Of course, I prefer, for instance, for multiple sclerosis, of course, patient wants action immediately. So the best, of course, is to use it in cigarette because you feel it immediately. But if I give this example of a lady in Czech Republic, so she used it also in salad. So it helped her very much because she had constipation because was in bed. After cannabis use, immediately was no this problem. So important is to know everything and how to use it. And as I said again, each patient must try how it works with him or her and must find correct strain and then use this. This is unfortunately we are not in the age of genomic. Genomic, it means that there will be a correct strain for particular patient that we can tell to the patient, you must use this strain and this will help you. So we are still not on this level, but we are approaching, but slowly. The biggest break are the laws, because we want to do research and to send samples through the border, it's complicated. Even if you do science, so it's complicated and it can endanger scientists. They can go to the jail very, very easily. So this is the biggest break in approach to the new knowledges about cannabis, and of course to this problem between countries, samples or bring samples, or also pharmaceutical companies are very powerful, which are not interested in cannabis treatment.
The things that you have told us are the things that you have told us are also valid for hemp. I would like to ask you that we first have to make
I really, it's very hard. If somebody can repeat it to the computer.
No, maybe now it's better. The things that you have been told us, or the facts that you have been told us, are also, I'm asking you, for hemp. That means that we first have to analyze chemical compounds of hemp, yeah. And then we will know how to use or whom to advise the use of this oil.
Yes, usually at present time they analyze it like for contents of cannabidiol or tetrahydrocannabinol. Some laboratories do also acids like cannabidiolic acid, cannabidiol, tetrahydrocannabinol acid, tetrahydrocannabinol, then cannabinol, cannabidivarol, and tetrahydrocannabivarol. Usually labs don't do better analysis.
And
what are they analyzing with terpenes? So it's not common. Still some labs are doing this, but it's, as I told you, if you have certain strain and two strains, and there are exactly same amount of THC and CBD, one can treat you and not the other one. So if somebody tells you this must treat you because over there is 10% THC and 5% CBD, it doesn't mean that it helps just to you, because maybe you need another strain where is also 10% THC, 5% CBD, but different strain, because important are these compounds which have entourage effect. It means that these compounds together with cannabinoids make treatment more efficient.
Thank you very much.
Hello, Dr. Hanush. My question is, in cannabis there is like 1,200 and I don't know how many compounds, flavonoids, terpenes, and in cannabis there is 1,200 and I don't know how many compounds, cannabinoids, terpenes, and flavonoids. Does this is this true for every plant on this planet? For example, if I take some cannabis plant here in Slovenia and one from South America and I don't know, ruderalis from Russia, and if I analyze it, will I find all of the 1,250, I don't know how many compounds, or are there plants where there aren't any terpenes in the cannabis or flavonoids?
First, from this known 1,265 compounds in cannabis, some of these compounds are also in other plants. This is true. But not all these compounds are in one strain of cannabis. These were a different strain of cannabis in different part of the world. And in one particular cannabis, they found this and these compounds. In the other one, they found this and these compounds. Somebody analyzed leaves, somebody analyzed flowers, somebody analyzed seeds, somebody analyzed the roots. Yes, so effort was just to know about all these compounds, but it doesn't mean that all these compounds are just in one cannabis plant. Of course, they are not in one cannabis plant, or for instance, concerning cannabidiol. In South Africa, I cultivated this strain in 1974, strain from South Africa, and there is no cannabidiol. I was surprised that I couldn't find it because at the time cannabinol originates from cannabidiol. But only later, Japanese scientists found that these are thanks of this synthase from cannabigerol. Yes, each plant cannabis has particular compounds, but it's true, and somebody tried it that sometimes you can use certain strain of cannabis and you can use some another plant together, and it can be more efficient because maybe in this another plant are entourage compounds which are not just in this strain. Cannabis are in other strains, but not in this, so it can help. But this is already combination which is not such easy. This really takes time, and some healers can use it. Yes, but for us, nobody can tell you use this medicinal plant. I give you example. I like mushroom in Europe. After rain, Czechs are in the forest and collect mushrooms. And mushrooms which are edible in Europe, I can find here, but here are not edible, these mushrooms, because they have this is quite different ecology, and they have different compounds. And I tried it. I ate here mushrooms which are delicious in Europe, and here I had really problems, like diarrhea or pain in stomach and so on. So similar, it's with cannabis, that if you cultivate certain strain in different parts of the world, it doesn't mean that the result will be the same.
Thank you.
Hello, Dr. Rumir Hanus. This is Ted Hong from Vancouver, Canada. I thought you were here, but I'm sorry I miss you. I have a couple of questions. I learned THC and our receptor working together and doing all this wonder work. I want to know, CBD works a little bit different than THC to killing cancer cells. The reason I want to know the CBD the mechanism how to kill the cancer cell without interfere with the receptor is possible?
You know, CBD, THC kill cancer cells, But CBD is also efficient anti-cancerogenic compound, and when you have combination, it's not ideal to use just THC strain only. Every time is very good that there is also CBD. This was example which I mentioned, South African strain, which has lack of cannabidiol. So they found that in South Africa, acute psychosis were much higher than in all the rest of the world for people which use cannabis. And they found, I found in 1974, this found they have the same strain for cultivation in France, Professor Paris. He also found that there is no cannabidiol, and it was 1974. In 1988, only they published that they found that explanation for South Africa why more acute psychosis after cannabis use, that they use this strain where there is no cannabidiol. So also for treatment is very useful for patient that cannabidiol can keep patient without influence what he doesn't want simply. Yes, effects which he doesn't want are suppressed by cannabidiol and stay only these positive effects of CBD and THC together.
The reason I want to ask that question is I'm dealing with a patient, 5 years old, a boy with DIPG, and it's a difficult word, diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma. And
unfortunately, it's very hard to understand. If you can tell this to computer without microphone, maybe it will be better. Because here I can hear it very good. Yes.
I'm dealing with a patient with a 5 years boy, has a DIPG, diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma. And
yes.
I researched the disease as because the position of the tumor is a brain stem, which
yes.
is there is no CB1 receptor in this region, and because that area control our breathing and heart beating, and so what I understood is because there's no receptor, the CB1 receptor, so THC doesn't combine this receptor, so it doesn't affect our breathing or any heart beating. That's why overdose of the cannabis cannot kill the people. So I wonder, because the tumor location is in brainstem, which is there's no receptor, what I believe. That's what I learned from the literature. So I wonder if CBD, the boy can take a CBD with the THC, mix it together. The patient.
In the fact, CBD doesn't bind to cannabinoid receptors. In the fact, it's a very weak ligand, and it has just quite different mechanisms. So even if this 5-year-old boy has this glioma, you said?
Yeah, the DIPG is a glioma, but location is the brain stems.
Yes. So even when it doesn't work through cannabinoid receptors, so it can be, of course, efficient. Also, it doesn't mean that if there are in particular region is not the receptor, that it cannot treat the particular part of the brain. In the Spain, Professor Manuel Guzman, they studied these problems in the brain, and they have only very limited amount of patients. They injected them just to the tumor in the brain, THC, and they extended the rest of life of these patients twice more. But unfortunately, they tried it only at 4 or 5 cases, so it's not significant, of course. And also the problem is that from a legal point of view, it's not such easy to do such experiments. So that is why it's lack of these clinical studies, but they proved that they can extend, you can find this publication, Manuel Guzman, and they extend just the rest of life. For instance, rest of life of patient is 1 year, so it was 2 years. So it's half year, so it was year. Yes.
Okay.
So
that means CBD, it doesn't need a receptor to walk the kill
Yes.
cancer cell. So maybe the patient can be expecting some kind of positive result.
yes,
Am I correct? Understood.
yes, yes.
Thank you.
You are
Dr.
right.
Hanus.
You are.
Sorry, may I add something? It's true that we will have the session on cancer later, so that maybe we can just answer a little bit the question. So regarding cannabidiol, cannabidiol has a mechanism of action on cancer cells that is not well known. Probably has to do with the stimulation of oxidative stress within the cell. And what we have found is that it's complementary, so we can use TAC together with CBD. Then your question was whether in this glioma in the pontine region, in a region of the brain where you don't have CB1 receptors, it would be worthwhile to use TAC. The thing is that cancer cells, many times, and in particular glioma cells, express CB1 and CB2 receptors, even if the tissue that is surrounding the tumor doesn't express the receptors. So it makes sense. I mean, it would be necessary to determine whether cannabinoid receptors are expressed or not, specifically in that tumor. But in principle, I would expect that glioma cells, even if they're in a region in the brain where there are no receptors, still they express receptors. So that would be a good rationale for using TAC and CBD in this case. Obviously, one doesn't have the certain evidence that it's going to work for sure. But, I mean, at least it might be worthwhile to try. But we can discuss later at a larger extent if you want.
You know, I only want to tell you that it's very hard to understand because there is big echo. My computer, I understand everything. But what you was talking about, I understood that you was talking about cancer, but I didn't understand almost anything. So please, if somebody wants...
Sorry, Guillermo Velasco here. I'm working also
Yes,
with
no, I understand.
and I was just answering, complementing your answer to this person, but we can discuss later. Sorry, it was not a direct question to you. It was just a complementary answer to what you said.
Thank you very much. Now I understood very good because by computer it's very clear. In the hall, it's a big echo. So.
I'm going to give a different perspective. So can you hear me right now, Amir?
Yes, Bob, I hear you very good.
So depending on the metabolic profile of the particular cancer, there are going to be different outcomes. So a CB1 receptor will allow for electron transport-driven production of energy, whereas in this particular case, you don't know whether you have CB1, CB2 or not at all. CB2 will turn on fat burning and cellular recycling. So totally dependent on the nature of the metabolism of that cancer. For example, was it already treated with a chemotherapy or radiation, or was it simply a cancer that arose from an imbalance caused by excessive sugar, basically? Or alternatively, it could have been of stem cell origin. And if it was stem cell origin, then it's already a fat burner. So depending on the status, different outcomes will occur. In general, we know that the CB1 receptor is not stimulated by cannabidiol, but we know it's actually inhibited by cannabidiol. So when you add cannabidiol with THC to a cancer cell, what it's going to do is it's going to shift the metabolic profile more towards fat burning. And if the metabolic survival mechanisms of the particular cancer were all defined within the sugar burning mode, they can't make the transition to fat burning. However, once again, if it was a stem cell origin, or potentially if it was a stem cell-like cancer cell caused by how it survived chemo and radiation, you can have a senescent cell which is burning fat but at a very low metabolic rate, so it is very stem cell-like. But because of its history, it often can have the ability to go back and forth in terms of easily adapting to different fuel sources, including things like glutaminolysis as another way of feeding into this whole thing. So what I'm saying is if we have a real sugar-burning cell and you force it into fat burning with CB2, you'll kill it most of the time. If, alternatively, it's already a fat-burning cell because it was a stem cell and it was, mutated from there, or you generated a stem cell by chemo and radiation selection for the quiescent state where the cell actually goes senescent, but still usually is driving that in a fat-burning mode. So, for example, if you have a truly resistant cell that's kind of a multi-fuel vehicle, it can do diesel and gasoline, then you've got to be able to overload it with extra free radicals. And that's why what we found is that by doing 10 days, for example, of intravenous vitamin C injection, because of the Fenton reaction and how that generates free radicals, that will overload, in many cases, these fully drug-resistant, multi-fuel able cells. So just a different way of looking at it, but it seems to be very consistent.
Thank you, Bob. So Dr. Melamed explain you it more deeply. In the fact, I am a scientist. I am not working with patients. It's better can answer you, Dr. Norby or Dr. Melamed, which have experience with patients. I have it just from the hand of the persons which treat with cannabis and from scientific literature. And I do rather basic research. So understand me that sometime for the treatment, this because I am not specialist on that, but I hope that together you can have better answer.
If I can add something, well, probably it's out of the point here to do this discussion because it doesn't seem very technical. And probably most of the patients or people here are interested in more practical questions. However,
Yes.
In any case, all these things that you mentioned are possibilities, but are just speculations. I've been working... one moment. I've been working with glioma cells, pancreatic cancer cells, hepatocarcinoma cells, cancer stem cells for a long time. I think there is any proof that there is specifically a change on the fatty acid or sugar metabolism. Actually, it does change. I have to tell you something. I did my PhD on fatty acid oxidation in liver metabolism. I have worked with autophagy. Probably I'm the first one who has shown that autophagy is activated by cannabinoids in cancer cells, together with my team. So I think I can talk about the things that you are saying because I'm working on that. And I think many of these things that you are saying are just speculation. It might be true. It might be true, I don't hesitate, but that has to be proved. And probably it's not relevant. What we have seen is that when one is treating cancer cells with THC or the combination of THC and CBD, the cells are committing suicide, are undergoing apoptosis, in many cases through activation of autophagy. And that's a reality. But we have also tried this in cancer stem cell, glioma stem cell, that according to your opinion, probably it's true, they have a different metabolism. But there are no proof that there are these differences between CB1 or CB2. That's something that needs to be demonstrated. So I think there's no point on telling that like the complete truth. That could be a theory, if we demonstrate the theory is right. But what is practical for the patients is that the patients can actually use cannabinoids for the treatment of cancer cells. And there is a reasonable possibility that they are actually working. But the other things need to be demonstrated. I have worked with MP kinase, I have worked with mTOC1, I have worked with all these things that you are mentioning. I know about that, but it's not that, as you say, that's the theory, and I have this speculation that has to be true because you have read the papers in different places. It's not like that. It doesn't work like that, and doesn't help science. Doesn't help even the progress of the cannabinoid research.
So again, an alternate point of view is thousands of people have been treated by Rick Simpson oil, people treating themselves. And we've been treating people not only with cancer, with many other diseases. And one of the things that you clearly see, because we've done it with HIV, for example, with Kaposi sarcoma, there's a consistent theoretical framework, and there is a lot of, in fact, support if you look at the genetic expression profiles of a variety of conditions, and you look at the conditions that you're using in your cell culture. For example, I don't know your specific ones, but typically, there's loads of sugar in tissue culture cells unless you're specifically going out of your way to eliminate that. And the levels of sugar that are used in tissue culture are equivalent basically to a diabetic person. So those are going to be sugar-burning cells, unless you've made them fat-burning cells, and you see that what you have is a condition that's AMP kinase dependent, which people don't do. So my whole point is to bring this idea, this theory out to people like you. But I've found that I've been prevented from having dialogue at scientific meetings this way. I was originally chastised when I first brought up the idea that cannabis could cure cancer at an ICRS meeting or something years ago. I was poo-pooed. How dare I say that it actually could cure cancer? And a number of people, activists and non-activists, came after me for saying that. But we have a lot of proof, practical proof, that is fully consistent and has all the scientific support behind it. For example, we know that CBD does promote fat burning because we see the weight loss that goes with using different CBD products. We know that when you take high concentrations of THC as well, and if you have never experienced an overdose of oral THC, you would understand that yes, you are turning on fat burning because you are overwhelmingly hot. And that hot is the same kind of hot that happens when you run, for example. Because when you first start running, you're using your sugar and then you're using your glycogen. But after about 10 minutes, for me, and it differs on different people, you'll set into a different mode where fat burning comes on and you use different muscles. And depending on your training, you've emphasized those different muscles. The point here is, everywhere you look, the things I'm suggesting are consistent. If you look, for example, at diabetics, okay? And I know of 2 insulin-dependent diabetics. What I'm suggesting is that when you are depositing fat, it's because you're taking too many carbohydrates, but rather than burning them and making too many free radicals, you turn them into fat. Or in other cases, you'll turn them into fibers. Or in other cases, you'll promote the cell to divide, rather than overloading it and killing it apoptotically initially with free radicals. So with the diabetic, if they go on a fat-burning diet, or more easily, in fact, to take high concentrations of cannabis, they will profoundly lose weight because you're burning fat. They will not need insulin that they normally were taking, and they will have normal sugar levels. We've seen this on many occasions. Within a year, people lose 80 pounds. Not a problem. And in a similar vein, viruses like HIV, as well as the herpes viruses, they have evolved in our differentiated cellular mode because our immune system was responding to it. And our immune responses, there are different types as well, but having to do with the correlation of metabolic profile as well. If you look at things like M1 versus M2 cells, there's all metabolic profiles associated with that and how they in turn interact with providing support for a tumor or not, etc. Anyway, with the HIV, by taking a gram a day of oil, with the insulin, with the diabetics, we only need a half a gram. We found maybe even less than that, depends on the person. But with HIV, the few people that we've done this with, they take this gram a day and went from, for example, millions of HIV viral load to undetectable with a spinal tap. And likewise, their T-cell count went from 37, which is full-blown AIDS, on up. We were doing really good analysis in Amsterdam for this one particular person, but sadly, what happened was the entire HIV team of Amsterdam was on their way to a meeting in Kuala Lumpur or something. That was the plane that was shot down over Ukraine. And the entire HIV research team from Amsterdam that had our data as well, where we showed, for example, selective mutations in specific genes that fully fit with the idea of oxidative metabolism, etc. Unique mutations that they had never seen from this guy who's been using it for now 6 years. And the one thing that I kept saying to him is the only thing I don't understand, this was earlier on, is why you still have, he had the hump on the back from when he was taking the retrovirals, and he had the stomach from this dyslipidemia. I said, I don't understand why you still have that. And about 2 years later, that was also all gone. So you don't clog arteries if you're burning fat. You clog arteries when you're eating sugar and eating too much sugar, and the cells are trying to protect themselves, so they make that fat. You will see, I'm begging scientists to interact, show me that I'm wrong,
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very clear that cannabinoids, they regulate metabolism, and obviously they regulate the consumption of fat or these procedures that you are mentioning. I don't question that, that's true. But we cannot say that by activating one receptor or the other, one is regulating specifically metabolism in one way or the other, because in our experience, for instance, you were mentioning AMP kinase. We found that treatment with TAC activates AMP kinase in glioma cells, independently if it's via CB1 or CB2 receptor. So what I mean is probably for most of the people here is not so relevant. I think we don't need an excuse to say that people go and use cannabis, because if you feel well and you want to use it, that's fine. And then for medical purposes, probably we need more proof if we want to say this is going to cure something or the other. Obviously, metabolism is regulated by TAC or by cannabinoids via cannabinoid receptors. Maybe AMP kinase or the fatty acid or glucose metabolism are regulated in a balanced manner. As I mentioned, I was doing my PhD on that, so obviously there is a close connection between fatty acid oxidation or glycolysis, one via or the other. I don't question that, I agree. The problem, I think, is that there are a lot of observation that match with an idea doesn't necessarily mean that that idea is true. I mean, for doing that, we need to do experiments. So my only concern is these are nice theories, and maybe we need to prove them. Once we prove them, then we can say that it's scientifically that way. But we cannot just say, because I have this idea that it's reasonable, it's sensible, it's necessarily true. Also because in this context, we don't need that excuse for saying to people, if you feel okay smoking marijuana or having cannabis in your daily day, and then you are feeling better, maybe metabolism is affected, maybe you are burning more fat, maybe you are in general feeling well, that's fine, but it's not necessarily that the reason. And the people could still smoke marijuana without having this necessarily being true. But if you tell it in a way that seems to be already proved, then I think we are not transmitting the right idea, because it's not proof. I'm keen to prove it. I'm keen to doing the experiments and then say, okay, you are right. There are differences between stimulating CB1 or CB2 receptor in stem cells or in cells that are differentiated. So I don't have any problem on discussing scientifically, and I don't think your ideas are wrong. What I think is that they are not already proved, and then we need to prove them before to tell them like something that is completely true. That's my only point, not questioning that you might be right.
So I appreciate that, because you, in fact, by understanding that I might be right, that's something important. That's a dialogue that I miss with too many scientists who, as soon as they hear what I'm saying, their brain goes like, especially if you're dealing with oncologists. Doesn't work. What I have seen, and you probably have not seen, are many, many people around the world who have had cancer and who were told to go home and die. You've got 4 days left. And I've seen them years later healthy and happy because of using cannabis. So the default position from my perspective should be that everybody has the right to make that choice, whether they want to use that oil, however it's made, wherever they're getting it from. And what we're seeing, when we had the meeting in Prague a couple of months ago, there were a number of people like many of the people here who help other people by providing oil, by telling them how to use it, etc. And what these 5 different people from 5 different continents, using their own methodologies, the general conclusion was that they're having about an 80% success rate, and that the people who are failing are usually the people who've gone through chemo and radiation. The concepts that I've presented, and I didn't go over some of them maybe sufficiently, and I would love to talk with you further, but basically how all we do is we select for a metabolic state, and that metabolic state then becomes the genetics. So when you have replicating cells and you have S phase and you have the aerobic glycolysis going on, and then you hit it with killing agent, you select for the survival of those cells. And then those cells mutate to become the genetics that's compatible with that. And it's a very logical assumption. I agree it hasn't been formally proven, but we can see the consequences of applying these things. I don't know if you saw the pictures I showed yesterday of the woman with the squamous cell on her nose. So we had it analyzed. We know that different people and had different cancers. And they don't care whether the science approves or not. You know, when you're a person who's had some Mohs surgery and they want to cut half your face off again for the next tumor, and then you say, well, I might as well try the oil, and you put the oil on and it goes away. And then you come up with another one and you put the oil on and it goes away. You are the experiment, because for you, you can repetitively cure your cancer. And that's all people care about. We are repetitively curing cancers.
Just a second. This is looking nice now. So I was thinking to change a program because it will be dual between some scientists. And I also asked Lumir if he will stay online so we can have some whatever. Of course.
Hi.
It's a discussion.
I want to say you were right, okay? And we need you, and we need you too.
I agree.
But as our colleague yesterday said, we all have a right to health, okay? And we have a right to good health. Yesterday I asked the audience, how many doctors are here? Yeah. Not one hand came up. Where are these guys? Okay? Oh, there is one doctor? Welcome. But, so we had one hand. Yeah, but it is no, because she was there yesterday. She was quiet. No, but it's very important because you see, some of us come from evidence medicine, and you know, many years ago, I got seriously crucified by CDC, by activists, and by many people for conducting trial on mothers who were HIV infected, doing a placebo-controlled study, because this was the only way to institute a prophylaxis in HIV-infected mothers so that their babies didn't die. So I think we need both. Because, you know, on one hand, you say, yes, we have the right, but that patient needs to know Dr. Melaming and needs to be convinced. Since I've seen you last, I lost several friends to cancer. Why did I lose them? Because when I told them, and all of them had brain cancer, when I told them to consider cannabis, the answer was from one, my doctor thinks I'm doing very well. But that's true, but you know, then we are into activism. I'm saying you have seen all these cases, okay? So why don't we take all these cases of people who are just about to die and show in a study that they don't. You know, I can tell you, you know, let's get at them. Let's publish them. What needs to happen? The patient who has cancer has a right.
To speak at conferences.
What are you doing here, Bob? You're welcome.
Yes, but not the official blah, blah, blah. I was rejected recently from a conference in Pueblo. I was the chairman of the bio department at the University of Colorado in Colorado Springs. So I made the bold thought, the foolish thought, that since I was actually part of the school system, maybe they'll let me talk. And what did I want to talk about? I want to talk about the need to interface thoughts like mine with your experiences so we can do this testing and see if what I'm finding out, and which is always consistent, which is predictive and everything else, whether or not we can look at the molecular end of it. But I don't care about the molecular end as much anymore because I know what I can do with helping people.
Sure, I agree, but I'm telling you, it is possible.
I agree.
With the right funding, I can, for example, guarantee that I could have a clinical study open in 6 weeks in Europe with the funding with cannabis.
And I told you we will do that as soon as the
that?
money flows, and I can say, here, Dorothy, go do that.
Yeah.
And I've set up everything to do that, so I will have the funds to do whatever I want, wherever I want, whenever I want, and we will be doing all of these things.
Well, this sounds absolutely great.
I think it's a very interesting debate, but I think we all have the same idea. Sure. Probably I've been working almost for 20 years on the anti-cancer activity of cannabinoids. I have done all my best to try to translate these results into clinical studies. But on top of that, I have tried to help in the way I managed to patients, because many patients were writing us. I was always directing them to a medical doctor because I'm not a medical doctor, but with the idea, obviously, I really believe that cannabinoids have anti-cancer activity because I have seen it, not only in cells, also in animal models. But that's why I think that, I can say there are things that are proved, and there are things that are not proved. We have done these clinical studies, they are just starting, but the results are not, this is the magic medicine, but still they might help. That's what I think we have found, and I cannot say to the patients, no, for sure your cancer is going to be cured. No, maybe it's helping. In some people, maybe it's working very well, and hopefully it's because of that. Just before coming here, maybe some of you know Jeff Ditchfield. So he's a guy who is, doing a lot of things in the cannabis world. And he was coming to the lab with a guy 14 years old and with a mother. He has a cancer, almost terminal. He was about to die. He started to take these extracts, 1,1-AC CBD. And he was completely cured at that point. I don't know if it was because of cannabis oil or not. The truth is that the guy was cured. And obviously I was very happy, and he was saying, thank you for your work. So I was really moved by the fact someone was coming to the lab. And I said to the guy, I don't know if it was because of my research or not, it was because of cannabis oil or not. I cannot prove it. But the truth is that for you, maybe it was very helpful. So obviously I'm not denying the possibility that people are going on these treatments. I always recommend, if it was myself, I could probably add on my therapy that. But the only thing I'm saying is we can encourage the people to do it, but we cannot say what is not really proof, like is proof.
No, all we want to do is have people have the option.
Exactly.
We want to give people the information, and as free human beings, let them make their choice. Because I was educated like you within the system. And at this point, I know for myself, and I'm sure for Bojidar and countless other activists, if we had cancer, we would not go to the doctor, we would not go to the system other than potentially for a diagnosis. We would come and we would take our oil and we would take these other alternative things that we've seen work repeatedly. We don't care anymore about the scientific establishment, other than I love taking the information so we can understand what's going on. But we are doing it. How many people have you saved? You mentioned one. Well, what if 100 people or 1,000 people came to you and said, thank you for saving my life? You will start to believe that it's true.
Yeah, but actually...
just a second. May I just interfere, because I think it's the right discussion from all three, because one of the intention of our seminars is exactly that, to connect activism, science, and whatever we need to get this medicine available as soon as possible to everybody who needs it. Because all until now were political, bureaucratic games to postpone all the researches. You know how many problems you have at the researches and everywhere. So I think we should all work together, and this is our intention also why we organize those seminars. That's the point.
That's why it's so important.
And Bojidar, thank you indeed, because I think I've been to many conferences, and I tell you, yours, despite being small, is actually one of the best, because most other conferences take sides and you don't, and you need that balance. Because I just want to but it sort of goes away from what we discuss. But these are very important points. In Europe, legally, and not just in Europe, we are limited, even if we grow hemp legally, we are limited to what we grow. We cannot get a license, and I'm speaking as a holder of one in the UK, we cannot get a license for a strain that isn't approved. That's a serious problem, even from a scientific point of view. Scientifically, I've been fighting my own government, and these guys are very friendly, but I'm not progressing very fast, to be able to germinate seeds that are of unknown origin. And I'm getting a pushback because these guys are asking, well, what are you going to grow? And my answer is, I have no idea. I have some seeds from different countries, from different places, and I don't know what they are. And to test I need them in a lab in order to test the variety. So I think it's a complicated matter, but we do need the right to do the research, proper research on correct varieties. I mean, what we've heard from Dr. Lumiere, what does he tell you? That it's not enough to have just the right level of CBD, of THC. If you go throughout America, Canada, this is what people are testing for. You know, they get... Okay, it's so... Correct. So what does that mean? Do we understand, and do we understand which profile completely? You know, is it...
No, but that's the point. You're trying to say this matches the real...
No, but I'm not. I'm just saying we need all of us to contribute. You know, if you take, I'm talking about the experience of, for example, working with AIDS patients in 80s. Okay, what did they get? They got, a lot of people made money on South American plants that had simply stimulants and steroids. So did the patients get better? Did they feel better? Yes. Did they die afterwards? Yes. So we are saying, you are saving thousands of lives, okay? I have patients who die because their oncologists and doctors will either not allow them to take cannabis, or they tell them nothing to worry about. We're going to keep you alive on whatever we've got.
But you know David, so you know what I'm saying is exactly
I know, but
true.
one patient...
No, but we have others as well. That's the one you know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and you know, it's a complicated matter.
But you know David would be dead if he was not doing cannabis.
Well, he might have been dead if he wasn't treated 20 years ago when I met him as a kid. So, you know, let's just keep it. You didn't know him then. I knew him when he was 16 years old. So, you know, there are many different examples, and they are complicated. And at the end, you know, if you go out of here and have a car accident, we are going to probably take you to surgery, not plaster you in with cannabis because you won't survive. So, you know, you need...
As I said, emergency medicine is perfect.
We need everybody around here, including legislators, including people who talk about human rights, not just human rights, rights to do research, freedom of doing research, freedom of doing clinical studies, and the money. Because, you know, we spend a lot of money as a humanity. I'm a European community expert. I review daily, 20 proposals for each one of them gets about anyway between 3 to 6 million euro. My euros, your euros. You know, we all pay tax. So why can't we decide how we're going to spend our money? So it's all, we are somewhere in the middle between the activism, between our colleagues who are capable of doing research, between people who devise theories like you, and between those who also have done some experimentation, have some evidence. But, you know, I'm simply saying we do have the right to ask our doctors to be more qualified, and we do have the right for this to be available to us. It's very simple.
What you just said,
if I can add something, the thing is that we need to, in my opinion, we need to, as he said, fully agree, we need to integrate cannabis as part of of the treatment. And obviously the people have the right to use it. But for instance, in the case of cancer, there are patients that are being cured with the medicine that actually we have. For instance, if we look at my mother died of breast cancer 20 years ago. Probably now she would be alive, not maybe using cannabis, but probably using anti-HER2 antibodies, because now many women with certain types of breast cancer, they are actually living for very long, or maybe they are even cured. So we don't need to rule out traditional medicine, because sometimes it can help a lot. We can add on top of that maybe cannabis, or maybe one person can take the decision, but we cannot say to someone, yes, for sure, leave all your other treatments and substitute them by cannabis because you are going to be cured. No.
We are never saying that. We only give people information so they can make an intelligent choice.
Yeah, but then the information that we say needs to be supported by science. One thing is that we have the option of saying, okay, you want to smoke marijuana or it's going very well for you, excellent. I'm the first one on support of that. I think we should do a complete legalization of marijuana in general, not only for medical purposes. But if we go for medical purposes, there is a difference, because actually someone who decides to go for a treatment, for instance, let's say 1 gram or half a gram of marijuana every day, has to pay a lot of money on oil, money that is not covered by the health system. So actually it's a lot of money, and someone is getting a benefit, an economic benefit also in the cannabis industry out of that oil. So it's not completely innocent. We need to be also aware of that. So there is a business also behind, even in sometimes a black business, sometimes a legal business, but it's also there. So if we can prove that actually cannabis is working, for instance, in the context of cancer, then it will be very easy to convince the regulators that they need to pay for that also for patients. And then that could be added on top of other therapies. In some cases, maybe in some others, it's not working well. And I think it's important not to say this is completely alternative. No, it's something that has to be integrated within the system.
Can I give just one example on that? Many years ago, I met a very wealthy man in Brazil who was spending extraordinary amount of money on alternative treatment because he had leukemia. And he was convinced he was cured, which he was, and he was extremely grateful to people that treated him. Problem? He had self-limited leukemia. He had a self-limiting leukemia. So he didn't need any treatment. His leukemia regressed on its own. He spent millions being treated. His friends who treated him benefited greatly. And you've said two important things. I don't care about science except perhaps for diagnosis, except perhaps for information. You know, for someone who has worked in AIDS, this has become extraordinary stumbling blocks. When the companies reduced the prices and the price of drug was not important, I worked in emerging economies in Africa and South America, and the biggest problem was diagnosis. We didn't have the money to diagnose people, we didn't have the money to test them, and we didn't have the money to monitor them. So I really vote seriously for some sort of integration. And it's good to have people on all spectrum, because we need people to speak out.
Just a second, Bob. I just want to say something. Guillermo is right about the black market. But if you deal with incompetent experts in Slovenia, with incompetent bureaucrats with their own companies behind who are, you know, then you have black market. If you have stupid state which cannot regulate things like it should be, then you have black market. And this is not... Yes. But you know, how can happen that the cannabis is most researched plant on the planet? The doctors, I don't know, scientists, all promoting cannabis, and it's still not allowed even to use in any form in Europe.
That's exactly what I want to bring up.
That's the biggest stupidity ever.
And I believe that the reason for that is because the scientists who should know better and should be speaking out that we all have the fundamental right to use this are not doing so. If everybody who knew about the medical benefits or just the scientific prediction of medical benefits would speak out and demand that we all have rights as human beings to use this God-given plant, it would be over. But instead we have experts going saying, we need more research, we need more research. That's killing people, and I don't find it acceptable.
Yes, we need more research, but in meantime, we may not fool people around and lock them up and, you know. Yes, we need more research every day, that's not a problem, but the people may not be stigmatized because of the use. Yeah. No, more research, more proof, everything, because we are making research every day in every field of our life, so that's, you know. But we have to allow people to use it right now, and you can make research even easier.
As I was saying yesterday in my presentation, obviously we need more research and we need more proof to affirm that something is going to happen. But that doesn't preclude the fact that patients need help now. In the context of this Spanish Observatory for Cannabis Research, we have a very good example because we have patients, we have medical doctors who are interested in using marijuana, and we have researchers. And the head of this, Carola Perez, she's a patient who broke the coccyx when she was a child, and she was taking opioids for a very long time, and she was about to commit suicide because she couldn't really support the situation. So when she started to use cannabis, she was getting much better. Not because she completely suppressed the use of opioids, but she could reduce a lot, and then the quality of her life improved completely. So she became really a believer of that. And she's always saying, my pain, our diseases can't wait. So that's true. I mean, why not facilitating the people the access to cannabis? And we are speaking up. We are the scientists. We are going to different conferences, even where people are against drugs, and we are explaining why medical cannabis should be legal, and we are trying to do our work in Spain. I'm sure it's going to work.
And that's why Spain is moving forward.
Yeah, but we shouldn't mix that with the fact that still we need the proof if we want to say for sure it's going to help. But in the meantime, it's true that the people cannot wait 20 or 30 years before this is approved. And they have the right to use it right now. So I think we all agree on that.
I think we all agree, but take an example from nutrition. Okay, we have extraordinary amount of nutraceutical products. You go to Tesco's or any other, and you have walls filled with something for cardiovascular, something for your bad stomach, something. It's all colorful. It takes there are plants. So which one? So what do? So you go to the shelf and you forget everything. You go on cannabis. You take nutraceutical products. You go on a diet. You ask your doctor, what do you actually do? So it's true. And then you have pharmaceutical industry that is obviously saying, we will lower your blood pressure with ABC drug. And then you go to nutraceutical industry conference, and there is nutraceutical industry and says, don't forget about all this. We actually have this new fantastic compound we isolated from a carrot or from a tomato. Now, you make a calculation. If you are overweight, you have high blood pressure and maybe a lot of sugar. If you calculate what you'd have to take based upon what's available to you, you'd be, your house will be like that with pills, so I think it's balance. I agree. We should advocate for the right because, if somebody is dying, they have a right to painkillers. They have a right. But it doesn't matter. I agree. But equally, we have arrived, even in nutraceutical industry, at the situation, don't eat margarine. No, you do eat margarine. Don't eat butter. Yes, you eat butter. Don't eat coconut oil. Yes, you do eat coconut oil. I mean, at the same time, we are quite educated, quite a bright society with lots of news. So why don't we use that knowledge? We can use the knowledge, and we should be using the knowledge. But the knowledge is not good unless it filters somewhere. Because we have created a 2-3-tier society where some people medicate themselves, some go to the doctor, some ask a friend, but we pay taxes. I don't want to pay taxes to people who don't know. I want to pay taxes to educated doctors, but the doctors have also the right to education, Bob, and they don't get it. Young medical students do not learn nutrition, they do not learn about endocannabinoid system, they have no idea. They will go through 6 years of medical school, will come out on the other side, and will wonder what happened to their lives.
At UVM, we have a course on cannabis, but they don't want me to speak at it. As a volunteer to just give a different perspective, I'm not allowed to speak.
Bob, I just want to tell you, we informed all our institutions from Ministry of Health to medical chamber, everybody, you know, and I said now, Ted came from Seoul, right, for this conference to learn something new, and our bureaucrats and are 100 meters from here with a bunch of invitations and nobody appeared here. So that's the biggest problem. No, the biggest point why cannabis is not allowed is very hard to spit into your own bowl. And if they are talk about until now, it's horrible and dangerous, you know, they cannot switch their brains overnight. And therefore, such conferences as this are very important to kick them a bit.
Yeah, I think one thing that we need to be aware, and that's crucial, is we need to convince the unconvinced, because many people in this audience is probably already convinced that cannabis is very good, and they obviously want to use it. But we need to target the right people that are in the right positions, because if we convince them, then we will get a change. For instance, our strategy in Spain, we have many doctors who are like basic doctors, normal practitioners, who are really interested, they are happy patients. But we want to target the heads of services, of oncology, of pain units, places where there are actually people with influence, that actually can also influence the ministers, can influence the government, so they actually change the regulation, because if you convince the right people that are not convinced at the moment, but they might be convinced because there are data and situations that really convince, then the situation changes. And something like showing a patient who was in a very bad condition, and then is in a good condition, for instance, Charlotte, or some of these children who have epilepsy that was refractory to all therapies, and then after taking CBD, for instance, they change completely their lives. I think that's something that any politician can deny. And then that's helping step by step. So I think it's important to convince them. I know it's difficult. We have difficulties in Spain. Sometimes even the argument, I was in a conference the other day where there were physicians and there were also representatives of the health system. And one of them was saying, well, but we need to have, if we decide to go for cannabis, we need to have a psychiatrist or psychologist always, because the people could get addicted to cannabis. And I said, think what you are saying. Imagine someone that has a glioma, that only have a life expectancy of 14 months. You think even in the case that it's not probably real, that he's getting addicted, it makes any sense to prevent the use when maybe he's gaining morphine. Yeah, exactly. That is so obviously very addictive. So it's so logical that we need to convince. But I think the arguments have to be a little bit also on their line of arguments, because they are used to discuss also with scientists, with other medical doctors. So we need to convince them, because that's the way that can be incorporated into the system, and then we will be able to help.
Well, the big advantage of cannabis in terminal patients is that, you know, I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but the big problem of terminal patient, even if they are not going to live, is the fact that morphine causes incredible constipation, and to the point, and controlling that is medically extremely challenging. Anyone who has looked after terminally ill patient will know that. And just even alleviating that makes a huge difference to the remaining life, to the patient, to people who care for that. Just that. You know, forget about MS, all other conditions. Just alleviating the last 10 months of life makes a difference.
This is the basic human right that if somebody is sick, that he can use anything, even brick, if he wants to. But yes, you know, the big point is also the possibility or the right to choose. You know, every patient should have a right to choose his own treatment. And I don't understand doctors, medical doctors, who see patient who should be dead for a long time and he comes back and they don't even ask why. And I just want to ask Tiasha to tell you her experience. Just very short. Yeah, ako po slovensko. You have a translation? Yes, you have. Yes, you need English. Yeah.
English.
It's okay, Božo, leave it. I'll try.
You will try?
I'll try. Hello, my name is Tiasha. I'm from Slovenia. And I had been diagnosed with glioblastoma multiforme 3 years ago. I used cannabis, a lot of cannabis, and for 2.5 years my MRI is clean.
But you had also the other treatments.
I had one cycle of chemotherapy and radiation.
And surgery.
And surgery. I really wish that me and people who has what kind of problems with health, that we could choose what to use. That we have an option to use. It is my body.
Correct.
It is my health. And it should be my choice.
But I agree with it. In fact, you know...
And just before you start, and I have to say another big stupidity, her husband has criminal charges because he bought oil for her. He might go to jail, the process is still on the go, and this is the, you know... That's the crime.
You know, the problem has been very much in the best group of patients that was very capable of their own activists were patients infected with HIV. And you know, a lot that they have changed. I mean, it's not a secret, I used to work for the company called Wellcome GlaxoSmithKline. These guys have damaged our property, destroyed our offices. I ended up working with them later, you know, but without them, the FDA, the regulators, would not have changed the way in which they had looked. And I know it's very difficult. When you have multiple sclerosis, when you have cancer, it is hard for you to go on the front line. With HIV patients, very often their partners, their families went for them. So it is very hard, but I think we do need patients in this mix to speak out, to tell their stories. And, you know, with the advent of internet, with the advent of technology, we actually can also get those stories together. And today, at least in Europe, and patients have a right to get their own data. So we can show that data as well. Not perfect, but data.
That's exactly what's happening, in that people like Bozidar are collecting data in whatever semi-official manner they can. There are people like that all around the world doing exactly the same thing. And what my intent is that as we accumulate that data and as we accumulate the necessary funding, that what we're going to do is go to the World Court for Crimes Against Humanity. And I think the publicity and everything else that'll come out of that, because we will have data from all of these people all around the world, all of the groups that I'm involved with that are doing exactly, we've created our little swirls where we interface with the government, where we interface with the people. The only way the governments ever change is when they think it's their ass on the line. And the only way that happens is when the people are in discord with them. And the more people that use cannabis medicine, the more they understand that they have been lied to, they are being murdered. I'll give you one example. I met a guy, he had bowel cancer, right? And he starts on the oil right away. His cancer was going to be, it was a month later or 3 weeks later. And they took out a foot of his colon. And there was no cancer there anymore. So things can happen and change very, very rapidly. And we should have cannabis as the first line of defense for almost every illness. And then we tweak from there.
Okay, now it's noon. I think it was a long discussion. Let's take 10 or 5 minutes break to have a coffee or drink. And maybe we will not stick on our program. Maybe we continue discussion like this. Maybe it's much better because we heard lecture yesterday, and through discussion maybe we can, I don't know, open more questions or whatever. Okay? So let's be back in 10 minutes.
In sicer ukvarjam se s CBD izvlečki, svetujem, kako jih uporabljati. In me zanima, glede na to, da se v tem seminarju dosti izpostavljali dejstvo, da potrebujemo za dober učinek konoplje, da potrebujemo prisotnost in THC-ja in CBD-ja. In glede na to, da so ti izvlečki, da je poudarek na CBD-ju, kjer je pa samo 0,2% THC-ja prisotnega. Kaj menite glede učinkovitosti napram izvlečkom, kjer je več THC-ja? Zanima me pa še tudi to, ker me uporabniki dostikrat vprašajo, kakšni so stranski učinki. Kar sem uspela po literaturah najdeti, ne bi bilo nekih izrazito izraženih stranskih učinkov, ampak nekako po izkušnjah uporabnikov pa slišim, da je prisotna zaspanost, znižen pritisk. Tudi sama sem to preizkusila za 10% ekstraktom, tako da me zanima, kaj vi menite o tem.
Maybe I can answer that question. This is a 10% THC extract with a less than 0.2% CBD.
The other way around. Yeah.
Okay, a hamstring now. The effects of CBD are good for
Se pravičujem. Gre za CBD ekstrakte, kjer je od 2,5 do 30%, tudi 50% smole CBD ostane.
To je ekstrakt iz imenovane industrijske konoplje.
Tako, ekstrakt iz industrijske konoplje, kjer je pa največ 0,2% THC-ja. Kakšna je dejansko učinkovitost teh ekstraktov? V primerjavi z ostalimi, kjer imamo več THC-ja.
First thing that comes to mind, it would be a good anti-anxiety. And also would be effective for cancer as well. If I was treating somebody therapeutically with an extract of a strain like that, I would give them that as a cannabidiol, and if I was treating cancer, I would increase the THC over the CBD dosage until you see an effect. Extracts like that, you say it goes up to 60%, that's quite a high CBD content in the extract. Once again, the THC concentration in natural extract will come up to around 5 or 8%. So you're getting a good amount of THC and CBD in a high extract. Is that a suggestion? I thought it was in my face.
It has to be in your face.
I would recommend go for the higher extract in the 40 to 50% range, up to 60 if that's available, because you will get a fair amount of THC along with the CBD.
I have a question actually to Dr. Lumia and to you. You say it's industrial hemp. So 2 questions. First, is it organic? Second, what is extraction method that you use? Do you know?
CO2 extraction.
It's a CO2, and is it organic or not? Yes. So it's organic industrial hemp. So you extract the whole plant, I presume, or just leaves, not flowers, correct?
Flowers.
So the flowers are extracted.
Yes, flowers, yes.
Okay. I have a question to Dr. Lumia, because first, I don't think, people may not like it, what I'm going to say, but I don't think we have a full profile of CBD clinically established enough to comment on side effects. The other thing is it possible that extract like this may have some cannabinol? I don't know whether Dr. Lumia can hear me, but if you take flowers of industrial hemp and extract it into CO2, depending on how it's been stored, is it possible that you have some cannabinol? And cannabinol will make people rather sleepy in very low amounts. There may be something else.
In fact, I studied hemp, what you call hemp. It means cannabis with low THC, low CBD. For me, any cannabis is hemp, because difference is only in quantity and ratio. And so-called hemp, this is very useful medicinal plant. We treated with hemp in Czechoslovakia from about 1955 up to 1990. I personally prepared for drugstore from 1970 to 1990 extract. Everything was, of course, organic, because at that time, this was time of organic cultivation. It was not like today you are afraid of this and this, so you add herbicides, pesticides, and I don't know what. I proved it because I studied detailed cannabis. Usually this hemp, which was cultivated in Czechoslovakia, at about 0.8% CBD and 0.2% THC. If I cultivated this hemp like Synsemia, it means I protected pollination of female plants. So then it increased, I can tell you, like drastically, like 5 times or even more. So it became, like according to the European rules, it became marijuana. So, and I published it in fresh hemp, because I analyzed as fresh directly, then I cut it and directly analyzed and dry. In fresh hemp was not cannabinol, because cannabinol is artifact which originates from tetrahydrocannabinol under influence of sun, after harvesting, during drying period and during storage period. So this is in effect artifact. And I saw also what patient used cannabis with very high CBN. It means that it was decarboxylated too much, or that it was old cannabis, because cannabis is higher. And even Professor Mahmoud El-Sohli from Mississippi University, who is the biggest expert in the United States for that. So even he has publication that according to the ratios and according to the amount of cannabinol, he can tell how with the aging is increasing amount of cannabinol. So cannabinol is artifact. It's not in fresh plant.
Thank you.
A word of caution, because we've seen things happen, and it's, again, important for the medical marijuana community to communicate with the more formal medical establishment. There are certain things that you have to be very careful of using CBD as well as THC extracts. In particular, the two examples that I've seen be very problematic is that a proper CBD extract or THC extract will definitely lower high blood pressure. But what I've seen is that if you take, no matter how much CBD you take, if you're not on blood pressure meds, it'll bring you down to a normal or a lower normal. But you're not going to get a dose effect of continuous dropping. In other words, it's providing a homeostatic level. Whereas if you're simultaneously on blood pressure lowering medicines, the two together will drop it too low and you will have low blood pressure and people pass out. So that's a danger right there. And in a related vein, but I've seen this with THC, but I believe the same will be true of CBD containing strains because of the fat burning end of it, is that diabetics have to watch very carefully, because when you turn on the fat burning, you don't need the insulin. And if you're not monitoring the change and getting off your insulin as you transit into cannabis and other things that promote fat burning, you can wind up with insulin shock, and we've seen that as well. So be careful.
What are those symptoms of insulin shock?
Diabetics know it, but you pass out, basically, which is not good to do when you're driving.
I just want to ask something, Vas. In that extract was 0.2% CBD, or in the plant material was 0.2% THC, sorry. In extract.
THC, what we had, it was usually 0.2%.
Samo malo.
Spraševala sem za CBD ekstrakte, ki so v bistvu proizvedeni.
Lumir vas nima prevoda.
Aha, slabo. Boste vi mogoče... Ja, gledajte, ukvarjam se z CBD ekstrakti, ki so tovarniško proizvedeni in je kontrolirana vsebnost CBD-ja od 2,5 do 50%, kar so smole, in je 0,2% THC prisotnega, to kot je dovoljeno, da je to v prosti prodaji.
Se pravi, da je to umetno mešano, to ni naravni ekstrakt.
To so naravni ekstrakti, to so naravni...
CO2 ekstrakciji pač...
To mi je jasno.
Regulirati, koliko je prisotno.
Se pravi, ni več naravni ekstrakt.
Ostali kanabinoidi so pa tudi prisotni.
Ni naravni ekstrakt, ok.
Ni celovit.
Ni, je že odvzeto, razumem, ampak ni naravni profil kanabinoidov. Ok. Ja. Now this extract, it's a little bit different. It's an extract, but with just 0.2% THC. So it can be on market in Slovenia, because in Slovenia it's up to 0.2 THC as a food supplement. But not anymore, actually, because public agency for, I don't know, medicine decided and issue a warning that the highest, I want to comment you guys on this, the highest dose which can be taken by a person in a day is 2 milligrams of CBD and 0.06 milligrams of THC. I want you to comment on this, please.
That's totally stupid. You need 100.
Thank you.
You need 100 times that amount for many of the benefits that we're seeing.
Plus, there is no data that would suggest that you have a serious toxicity. You can't kill even animals with CBD. So that recommendation is not based on data. So in fact, from the activism point of view, I wouldn't tell them it's stupid. I would tell them to give you data, because the regulators cannot make decisions per law, per European community, per any legal framework based upon no data. This is what regulators say, that they make decisions based on data. So ask them for the data. Very simple. But you can't, he said that this was, the comment from the audience was that this isn't safe enough.
Their argument was that they don't have safety studies on CBD or THC in a product like this, so for consumption.
That's a stupid argument.
I know.
You know, it's, for example, when we say to people with high blood pressure they shouldn't eat salt, we have studies with 50,000 people showing that salt is not good when you have high blood pressure, so they need to fund studies. No one can make rules in a civilized society based on nothing. So that argument doesn't apply, I'm sorry.
I know, but the sad thing that it will be applied, I think, and the problem is that they didn't look at all the studies, safety studies done on Sativex, done on Epidiolex, and let's say on Dronabinol.
Correct.
Which were more than 200, 300 studies done.
These studies are public.
Yeah.
They exist in the public domain. They have gone through European Community Regulatory Agency. So in a country, you know, you can go to EMEA, you can go to EU. You actually have the full right to bring your regulator to the task. It's not possible to make rules based upon nothing. It's not in Europe today, I'm sorry.
Just a question, this is regarding supplements, food supplements. So these studies were done on medicine. A question for you, were there any studies done on food supplements on the safety of these cannabinoids? Which is in itself illogic, because medicinal studies are way more, you know, have to be proven for safety than food. But
well,
that's their argument.
You know, on food, actually, I don't quite agree with you, because food industry right now is suffering from big problem. One problem is that it's precise because it's food. People assume that food is safe, and of course, you know, it's not safe when you are eating genetically modified corn syrup that is in most of our foods. I mean, if you go to the supermarket, I challenge you to find a tin of product that doesn't have corn syrup. And 98% of corn, at least in the United States, is genetically modified. So what are you eating? And it's the same with soya and so on. So I don't think, you know, that obviously when you eat a piece of meat or carrot and they have been grown in good conditions, that's fine. When you make products, I disagree that we do not need any safety. And the same with nutraceuticals. Because, so I think the safety needs to be done I think you need to go back to the studies done by GW that very clearly suggest that this is safe. And it doesn't matter whether it was nutraceutical or not. You have data, so they need to be shown. And the regulator has a legal obligation to justify decisions. So I wouldn't let them get away with it.
Lynn Wederer has written a PDR, physician desk reference for cannabis, based on the last century, meaning the 1800s up till cannabis prohibition, incorporating countless articles that show that it was used by humans in a routine fashion, extracts, etc., in a safe format. And she's presented that to the FDA at this point. She's part of the government in that she's the ambassador for autism from the federal government, just to get opinions. And their opinions at this point was that her argument seems good. The argument is that these oils, these extracts, should be classified as grass, generally regarded as safe. The same way aspirin was never tested in detail because it was used for so long. Cannabis has been used for thousands of years, but we do have at least medical documentation in America from American doctors that is going to be very hard for them to ignore and just say because of the FDA decided it should be illegal, it should be illegal. So this is going to come out in the next month or two, and there'll be a lot of controversy generated. We'll see where it all shakes out.
Thank you. I want to ask you, Lumir, how you have quality control on the cannabis farms or breeders, and which tests are you doing there to follow cannabinoid and terpenoid profiles?
You think in Israel?
In Israel, yes.
Look, we have 8 growers. Growers in the start they were interested only in THC contents. When I told them CBD, CBD, they were not interested. Later they came, we need CBD. So we started CBD, THC, and growers, today we analyze everything what growers wanted to do themselves, and I said, okay, just do analysis, and I told them, please, can you send me your samples that I can analyze and we can compare your results and my results? Never happened, they didn't want, and I don't know any example that one grower has analysis from 2 different places, what should be very good. So they are mostly based on analysis of CBD and THC. But in Haifa is a wonderful scientist, Betty Meiri, and he has also wonderful instruments which cost $500,000 and more. So with good instruments we can do something. So he is doing all cannabinoids and all terpenes. So he is doing profile of all strains in Israel concerning cannabinoids and terpenoids. Concerning cannabinoids, he is doing acids and he is doing neutral cannabinoids. So you have really full profile of any cannabinoid which he can find and any terpene or terpenoid which he can find in the plant. So he works on this intensively and he is specialized also on cancer. So he can test the different strains when he analyzes also how it works in vitro with beating cancer. So I think this is the only place which I know which works really on high level, and I hope that next month I shall have already new lab with new instruments, not for $500,000, it will be only for $300,000, but it still will be very good. We shall have UBL, CMS and GCMS, so we shall quantify what I told you, cannabinoids, cannabinoid acids, terpenoids, flavonoids, everything. And I shall cooperate with Dr. Meiri, and he's very interested for cooperation with me, and I think that we can do really on good level this research. Otherwise, growers, some of them have HPLC, some of them may give it to some company to analyze it, but it's very basic.
Thank you.
Standardization is extremely important to get a milligram per gram amount, and it's really my job to convince Bojar once again of the validity of analytical equipment. That's why I like to revalidate methods with people like Dr. Hanush and other labs who are credible and come up and standardize better.
I understand right, the standardization means that you inspect the let's say, extract, and you just acknowledge what's inside and take action according to what you have. Or should be the products, let's say, the product that you buy from a dispensary or a pharmacy should be the same every time.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that once again, it's variability. If you take an oral dose of cannabis, you expect a certain result, right? A certain effect. And that consistency of effect is very important in my mind to work out a regimen of dosage for a person who's treating for cancer. You have to be able to quantify what you're giving them. As a researcher, I like working with people that experiment with their dosage. We give them a standardized dosage. If they take it home, I suggest they take 50 milligrams in a capsule. I would like a person to double up one day, go back in half a day, and take notes. That's the way we learn, right? But if they stick at that 50 milligram that I suggested, you don't learn anything. But that's often what the patient or the member will do.
What I meant was, if somebody was to get, I don't know, 500 milligrams of THC a day, and let's say we have an extract that has once 25% of THC, then we should use 2 grams of it. And if we have 50% strength, but otherwise the cannabis ratio is about the same, then you would have to use just 1 gram of the other one that has 50% of THC. Isn't that standard? It's a lot of work for pharmaceutists to prepare the exact amount, but they could probably adjust the dose when they're making suppositories or I don't know, solutions for people to take.
Bob's grabbing for the mic here, so I'll pass it on.
Well, no, because that's a very important issue. And total quantity is critical from what we're seeing in terms of cancer patients. And if you wind up having to take a lot of something that's very weak, then you're also taking whatever the other stuff is. And again, that makes it even all the more important that you have it analyzed, because what if you're taking a whole lot of weak stuff that's loaded with nasty crap? So again, the analysis is extremely important, and we've seen these results.
Yes, but let's say we have the same strain, then the variations in ratios and percentage is not that big. It's like, let's say, 2-3-4%. And when you let's say we use white widow, and one is grown outdoor and reaches, I will say, one number, let's say 15% of THC, and we use the same clone and we use it indoor and we reach, I don't know, 22% of THC. We made the extract, but we just, in my opinion, as I understand it, we would just have to use that much more of white widow extract grown outside than the white widow grown indoor. But
it might be very different in other components.
Exactly. The thing is that I think you need to think on different batches. You may have something prepared that contains certain amount of cannabinoids. You could have variations when you are capturing the same variety inside, outside, in different conditions. But if you want to sell it to someone, and then you want a patient or someone to buy it, then that person needs to know what's actually there. And you are right, maybe the pharmaceutical or someone else could adapt it to the real amount that the patient needs to take in terms of THC, CBD, or other cannabinoids. It has to be clearly established what is in your extract. So you might have, and that's something that obviously needs to be discussed, you might have different batches. So I produce this summer batch, and the next summer another batch, and they contain different amounts THC or CBD, although they are similar. But then you need to explain that, and it has to be very clearly indicated in the batch, and then that might be used for a preparation of something standardized. But then when a patient needs to take it, or someone needs to take it, they need to know which is the amount, because then, as they said, then you can work out the doses that actually the patient is taking.
They should have batch numbers.
Exactly, batch numbers or quantification.
I think one thing I want to add, that most of all you needed cleaner. clean in terms of nasty chemicals. And you can get contamination when you grow outside that may not necessarily come from you. And you know what? I'm looking around the audience and I'm looking at the discussion. Let me tell you something. Years ago, we talked about resistance to drugs, genotyping, and everybody said, what a nonsense. You know, it's going to cost us a fortune, it's not necessary, we don't need to do it, we don't. Today, actually, for many drugs, for antibiotics, for many diseases, we do full spectrum. So if you, in cannabis, think that this is not going to happen, it's a joke, it's going to happen. It's going to happen, you're going to be driven to have to do it because there is a technology. And what happens, it happened in the United States only a few years ago. You had a patient who went to dispensary and bought extract. Then in a year's time, he went to another dispensary because that dispensary guaranteed particularly high THC. Then somebody said, oh no, but you also need CBD. So a competitor was selling CBD extract and they said, we tested in a quality assured lab. It's a progress, we can't stop it. I mean, why do we have mobile phones? Because it's a technology, and why don't we throw them out and write letters? We don't. We actually SMS, we use the technology. It's the same in cannabis, and you can't say, I won't do it. You can't say it's enough, because the technology gives you the opportunity to do it, and you don't do it, your competitor will. So I think, to me, the most important is clean. The second, whether you like it or not, we need to understand whether that extra cannabidiol, cannabinol, terpene, whatever else, doesn't matter or not. And for you today, no, it doesn't. But tomorrow somebody will produce data and will tell the patient that their cannabis is better and they will sell it for better price. Or maybe even for lower price, but they'll sell more and you won't. We have to face the fact that we need to sell a clean product and we need to understand how that product works for our patients. You can't reverse from it, I'm sorry.
Yeah, can I ask something? I would like to go in the same lane and follow what you just said and what was said in the morning discussions. And it's about, yes, the seed is a seed. And the plant grows, hopefully, in the same area, with the same water, and the same amount of sun that you get. And even in a sense of microbiotics, and you know that we are fighting for the decriminalization of use and the legalization of personal growth. But we know that there will be we would like that there are two ways of progress. One is the big grower, the corporate, we will not be able to stop it. And the second one is the personal growth. And I think for what we learned from Lumir in the morning, what you've been discussing, that actually what grows together with you may be in a nice synergy with your body and with your family. I mean, it's a kind of spiritual thing, but what Lumir said, you can have a plant with a similar structure of cannabinoids and another one with a similar, but it doesn't work for you. So this option may give us a strength to come up with this proposition in the legislative terms to say, guys, this is why you cannot stop us from doing it this way. And there is another. And the second question is maybe more to everybody, but mainly for the Czech guy. And this is about the mitigation of chemical disaster with hemp, which actually happened close to Ljubljana a month ago. And radioactivity. Thank you.
Come on. I hope I
I understood what you were discussing. So I wrote down some of my comments. We are discussing about standardization, and here I wrote down this is, and also I want to contribute something that is called pharmacological determinism. This, okay? So that effects of drugs stem simply from their pharmacological properties and are fixed, stable, and universal. Okay. I would like to criticize this pharmacological determinism since I'm coming more from public health, social medicine area. I would like to contribute that in addition to these pharmacological impacts, influences, the effects of drugs are not caused primarily by their chemical makeup.
Yes.
Not only dosage and the content of the cannabis. Of course, we know it's a mode of administration that is important. It is the age of the user. And then there are other very important factors that we usually forget on them. The effects of drugs are caused also by cultural beliefs about drugs and environment, political, social, economical, all this influence on the effects of cannabis. Legislative and enforcement context is important. This all has influence on how cannabis will work on us. Policy settings, social attitudes toward drug users, cannabis users. Psychological makeup of the user, subcultural settings, etc., etc. This is all what influence the effects of medical cannabis. And of course, because the pharmacological impact is much easier to measure, we usually forget on these other influences. But when we are discussing the standardization and when we are translating the knowledge from biology and pharmacology to policymakers, we should tell them about these other impacts. Because in particularly these other influences are important when we are fighting for the right to have access to medical cannabis. Okay.
Well, can I
hope I was clear. I hope I was clear.
It's extremely clear, but that's why we have such a popular development in personalized medicine, personalized nutrition. We know that we are not the same, and we know that we have different resistance also to toxic substances. You know, some people, we have different resistance to radioactivity. After Hiroshima, some people very close to the epicenter never developed cancer, and some died from radiation sickness within hours. We know that. And it's not just cannabis, trust me. You know, I tell you the story, many, many years ago, I was in Nigeria, and a traditional healer wanted to tell me my future. And he did. I then encouraged a professor of pharmacology, who was from the local university, to try his luck. He said, no, I can't do it. Well, why not? He said, well, because, you know, you can do it because you're not from our culture. If I do it, and he tells me that I have to kill a sheep, or even worse, a human, I shall have to do it. So I can't have my future goal. And that, told me how strong, so it was fine for me, because I came from Europe and to me the black magic didn't apply, but he, despite the fact he was a professor of university, he was working in pharmacology, did not have courage to go against his culture. So I think, for me, with due respect, even though we are fighting for the right to decriminalize the plant, for me it isn't different. We are different, there are variations, we do respond differently. When we talk, and I think maybe there is some misunderstanding, when some of us talk about standardization, we are not trying to tell people that they will not be able to grow cannabis in their garden because there will be a big brother to tell them what to do. But we need to be more and more aware that even when you grow tomatoes and you take toxic supplements, you throw them in your garden, these tomatoes will be toxic. So it's not just cannabis. We should not, when we talk to the regulators, we want the freedom, we shouldn't create something else that isn't. Because, look at organic growers. People are talking about biodynamics. Why? Because actually vegetables grown in a good environment are much better for you. It's not just cannabis. Cucumbers, beans, tomatoes, potatoes are all very, very important. And in fact, if you just take cannabis and do not change your diet, I challenge you that cannabis will work, but actually you need to look at your diet as well, and ideally grow it organically. So I think I agree with everything you've said, but at the same time, let's not focus just on cannabis because it isn't true.
I fully agree with what you have said, but I would add something. Actually, this placebo effect for many drugs, including cannabis, is very well known. So that obviously means that there are many additional factors, not only pharmacology, that are influencing the effect of it. However, as you also pointed, we know these individual differences that probably has to do with changes in the way that the receptors are for many drugs, not only for cannabis, for everything. But obviously doses in pharmacology are important because sometimes you have different effects. And we are not questioning, on the contrary, I think we are supportive of everyone cultivating their own plants, having their own supply of cannabis plants they want to use it. But here the point is, if you want to sell something to the general public, maybe someone who is not cultivating at home, someone that is living in a city or never had a contact with cannabis, but they realize that could be good for them, they want to buy them, and they want to buy something that has a precise amount of each of the components. Maybe not exactly always the same, but if I go for a batch, I know that this batch has contained this amount of THC, CBD, and is free of contaminants. I think that's the point, rather than having something that is always exactly the same. Well, but at least the patient or the people who are going to take these cannabinoids, they need to know what amount are in this precise extract. That's why I think standardization is important. Also because there is a business behind of all this. We need to be aware that the people are going to sell these extracts and they are going to earn a lot of money, but if they do it, they have to do it in the appropriate manner. So the people need to have the right, they have the right to have access to something that is containing the right amount of cannabinoids. And this is the same for tomatoes or for everything. You cultivate tomatoes at home at your own garden, then it's perfectly fine. But if you want to buy them and to sell them to someone else, then they should have certain properties, otherwise you may not be illegal to the people.